I think we're live. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm happy to be here with you. You may or may not be watching this live. If you're here live, drop a live, hashtag live in the comments, or if you're watching it back, drop hashtag replay in the comments. Either way, I'm super thrilled to be here with you today. And, this time we're doing things a little bit different. Normally I'm talking all about happiness. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the contrast. All week long at noon in the group, I will be sharing the cost that you may not even realize you're experiencing. I hear a lot of people say, I'm happy enough, but how many of you would like to wake up tomorrow just a little bit happier? You can raise your hand whether I can see you or not. Yeah, we all want to be happier, and you can be. You don't have to just take life as it comes and deal with the crap that hits the fan. You can actually make different choices in your life, different behaviors, different habits, and in small bite-sized chunks, start to increase your overall well-being. 1 out of 4 women in the United States today are on antidepressants, and we have more than we've ever had before, yet we're unhappier than ever. So this week, we're going to sit with that a little bit, because here's the thing about happiness. I'll share in a few minutes the definition that I use, but it's not going to be this constant state of up, 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 joy, 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 right? True happiness is more like deep contentment. And in order to experience those higher level, higher energy emotions like joy, like excitement, like this isn't an emotion, but it's certainly an experience, thriving, we have to be willing to go into and experience and feel those lower level, lower energy emotions like grief, sadness, anger, frustration, fatigue. The trick is not staying there or avoiding it. The trick to overall wellness, well-being, and happiness, contentedness, is a willingness to be with all of it. Because guess what, friends? This is the human experience. We are meant to feel. And there's a favorite quote now that I have some of my therapist friends sharing with their clients and colleagues, which is, if you feel it, you heal it. And if you ignore it, you store it. So what are you doing with the uncomfortable emotions in your life, with the challenging experiences? Are you doing your very best to ignore them and to push them away? Or are you courageously allowing them, feeling them, and moving through them so that you can actually move through them instead of having them get stuck in your system? What happens when we avoid unhappiness or uncomfortable feelings is that we actually store those ignored emotions in our bodies. And what your general unhappiness, even if it's just discomfort, what that does is it stores in your cells, it stores in your body. So you might notice that you walk around like this all day, every day, that your posture is really bad because you're contracted. There are 2 main energies in life. One is contraction and one is expansion. And when we're open, heart-centered, feeling loving, kind, compassionate with ourselves and others, it's actually pretty hard to feel down, depressed, and unhappy. And when we are stressed out, chronically fatigued, overworked, underloved, shut down, it's hard, really, really hard to feel happy, to feel content, to feel grateful. And what happens in this state of contraction is that our heart rhythm goes into what's called an incoherent rhythm. It's all over the place. The Institute of Heart Math studies this relationship with the brain and the heart and happiness. And they found that in just 5 minutes of being in states of anger or frustration or any of those lower energy descriptors, our immune system can be depressed for up to 6 hours. The cortisol in our blood rises. That's the stress hormone, which is linked very clearly to disease. This ease is linked to disease. Do you hear me? This ease, discomfort is linked to disease, because the more we're in a stress response, the harder it is on our physiology, the harder it is for our internal organs to function, the harder it is for our brain to function. Stress actually has been shown to damage brain cells. So this week, we're going to talk about how to counteract that, like what's actually happening. So often in classes, I'll talk about the 7 main habits of happiness. And this week, we're talking about the opposite. We're talking about the 7 main negative habits of life, basically, and what leads to greater unhappiness. And some of these things might surprise you. So I'm going to invite you to be willing to be uncomfortable this week. I'm just going to add a little note in the comment box to try to invite some of you here so you can join me live. I always forget to do this, so I'm pausing now to do it. And these lives are only going to be up to a half an hour. Some might be shorter, some might be a little longer, but my goal is 20 to 30 minutes, bite-sized chunks. Hi, Jessica. Good to see you here. Jessica says, dis-ease, I like to say. I say that. Yes. Okay, so this week we're going to talk about that, and it may feel uncomfortable. I give you full permission and hold space for you to be uncomfortable with this conversation this week. And I want you to know that it's okay. It is okay to feel unhappy, to feel depressed, to feel angry, to feel frustrated, to complain, to be aggravated. All of these things are okay. It doesn't make you wrong. In fact, the human brain is wired for negativity. It is how and why we've survived so long to create such a cushy society. So while we have more creature comforts than we've ever had before, we are disconnected from one another. We are disconnected from spirit. We are isolated. Our life is so freaking easy that, do you know the average person spends 11 years of their life watching television? It doesn't matter if you're streaming it or watching live TV or football games. I don't care. 11 years of your life. That's for the average person. I know a few who probably spend 20 years watching TV. And I can gratefully say I'm spending less than that, because I know for sure the one regret I will not have on my deathbed is not watching every Star Wars movie or spinoff that there ever has existed. So it's okay to be uncomfortable. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a natural part of our life. It's part of nature to move from expansion and contraction and back around again. You look outside wherever you are in the world. I'm in a colder climate. It is winter. It is fully winter now. It was -4 degrees Fahrenheit when I walked out the door this morning, and it is snowy and icy and cold. This is nature's contraction, shutting down, sending plants dormant so that the roots can heal. Isn't that beautiful? So that the roots can heal. So that when spring blooms again and expansion occurs, the roots grow up and out stronger than ever. And that's you, my friend. So if you're uncomfortable, know that this too shall pass and that you're safe to be here. And one of the things that I teach in my longer group programs or one-on-ones is this beautiful, beautiful tool of nature's guidance system and the 7 steps that go along with moving through the cycle of expansion and contraction. It's one of my favorite tools. And honestly, if I could only teach this one thing, that's what I would teach. So we move through nature, like nature, expanding and contracting. And I'm going to repeat myself a lot because it takes the brain 7 to 10 or so times now in this very busy multimedia society to actually hear something, for it to land, for you to recall it, for it to last in your brain. Because we're getting like 80 billion bits of information every second. And our brains can only handle 5 to 7 bits of information at any given time. And so I will repeat that it's okay to be uncomfortable. I will repeat that you might get uncomfortable this week, and I give you full permission to take amazing care of yourself if after these lives you're feeling contracted. It's okay. And because I love to work in opposites and not leave you down, we will end each live with an exercise that will help you lift up. So let's talk about the definition of happiness that I use and that we're using this week. It is, and if you're watching this on in the group live or even replay, you might type this into the comments for me so that it's there. So that if you're a visual learner, you will see it in print. And if you're an auditory learner, you get to hear it. I'll repeat it. Happiness in this context is an inner state of peace and well-being that doesn't depend on circumstances. Here's my repetition. An inner state of peace and well-being that doesn't depend on circumstances. And one of the reasons we're so unhappy in this world today, one of the reasons so many of us are on antidepressants or just feeling down in general, is that we have this concept we call the myth of more. This idea that if circumstances changed, if the things out there, if my mother had been kinder to me when I was growing up, if my ex-husband, some of you know my story and I'll share a brief version of it in a moment, weren't an alcoholic, then I'd be happier. Or if my partner put the toilet seat down, or if the weather was different or better, or if I had a raise or I made more money or this or that or that or that or that. If all that was different, then I'd be happier. When the truth is, circumstances only make up about 10% of our overall happiness. And the other 90% are genetics and habits of thought and behavior. And in fact, what the research in happiness and positive psychology has found is that the main difference between happy people and unhappy people is simply that we have different habits. So let me share with you some habits that I used to have when I was unhappy, because today you know me as a happiness trainer, as a happiness coach, and I know for sure that I am one of the happiest people that I know. I have amazing relationships with my 3 teenagers. They actually love spending time with me. In fact, I had to kick my youngest out of my office to do this live because he's 14. It's a day off school and he just wanted to hang out with mom. I'm so freaking lucky. I live in my dream home with my partner. We just celebrated 2 years in this gorgeous house on a lake. And we've been together 5.5 years. It keeps getting better. It keeps getting better because he's willing to do the work with me on himself and in our relationship. And I get to do this all day, right? I teach groups, I give talks, I work one-on-one with clients, and in group programs, I run workshops. It's like the most amazing, beautiful experience. I'm so grateful and lucky, and it was not always this way. 10 years ago today, I was getting on an airplane to go do a certification where I was really trying to find what would make me happy because I was desperately unhappy. I had been married for, gosh, 14, 15 years at that point to a high functioning, very charming alcoholic who was abusive emotionally, very rarely physically, but it did happen. And I was miserable. And my children were very young at this point, and I was taking out my anger on them. And I didn't like the parent or the person that I had become because I was told I was too loud or too much. And I slowly over time began to believe my now ex-husband. So I quieted down. And for a long time, I said I lost my voice or he took my voice. And as I began to do my work, as I began to look for that woman that I could remember who was happy once, or at least confident once, I realized that I gave it away. He said those things, and for my own comfort or fear of discomfort or fighting or arguing or silent treatment or shaming or blaming, I shut down. I gave myself away until there was nothing but a shell left. And as I hired mentors, as I went to therapy, as I grew strong enough and finally left that marriage, I began to reclaim parts of myself and repair the relationship with me that I had damaged. It's a long journey. It was a long journey for me, but it doesn't have to be as long for you. It doesn't have to take years. I see my clients now changing in months, and they are not changing who they are. They're releasing who they aren't. They're pulling back the rug on the dirt and debris and BS that they have shoved under that little rug. They're looking at it, they're feeling the discomfort, the dis-ease, and they are cleaning it up. And they're replacing the old negative habits of thought and behavior with new positive, supportive, loving habits of thought and behavior. And the first one that causes us pain, the first cost of unhappiness, is our own relationship with ourselves. How many of you get sick of your own negative thinking? Drop a note in the comments if you do. How many of you are like, God, I just can't, or someone else's? You may see it in someone else before you ever see it in yourself. Who notices the complainers? Oh my gosh, it's too hot, it's too warm, it's too this, it's too that. Or, oh, that person is so annoying. Or, blah, blah, blah. I don't like this government. I don't like that government. I don't like that person. They just complain about everything. The coffee's too hot. The coffee's too cold. Complain, complain, complain. You might consider for yourself what you complain about most often, because we all do it, even the happiest among us. I definitely complain about the cold. And not for too long, because now I can catch myself in the act because I have awareness of the behaviors that hinder my happiness. We blame others for our unhappiness. A lot of people will blame a difficult marriage or a bad divorce or a rough childhood or a traumatic event. That's the reason I can't be happy. So when we're blaming or complaining, what we're doing is just repeating a thought in our head, which we'll talk about more tomorrow, because we do repeat a lot of thoughts in our heads, and a lot of them, most of them, are negative. And when we're doing that, the thing about the subconscious mind is it does not know what is real, remembered, or imagined. So as you're replaying events or scenes or complaints in your mind or out loud, your body is re-experiencing that same thing. So if I'm complaining or reliving a traumatic event or an upsetting conversation, then cortisol is releasing in my bloodstream, and my whole body is, as if it was happening now, re-experiencing the stress. This is what causes disease. And so we can blame, it's their fault. And as long as we do that, nothing changes. And then we shame ourselves. Oh man, did I do this when I was in the height of the pain in my marriage? I was yelling at my little children like a maniac. I did not know who was coming out of me. In fact, I knew who it was. It was my own mother, the mother I had promised never to be like. And yet, what I learned about at this time was that, our brains from ages birth to about 7 are just sponges. We're in a meditative state, and we absorb everything we see. So this is our early life programming. We witness and absorb. This is how our programs begin to be wired. And what happens as adults is, for instance, if my mother screamed at my siblings and me when we were, say I was 4 or 5 years old, and this is a true story, then when my own children are about 4 or 5 years old, I, as the adult, something in my brain says, oh, this is what you do. Because this is what you witnessed. Now this is what you do. So now I'm screaming at my 4-year-old child. And so many people simply repeat unconsciously patterns, cycles of generational abuse. But I had already studied psychology. I had already studied sociology. I had already studied family systems and child development. And I knew this stuff. And at that time, I was also delving deeper into personal development again to find my way back to who I really am. And so I became more aware of it. And then I did something about it, because we complain, we blame, we shame ourselves. I was ashamed of the parent I was being. And so I would say, God, you're a terrible mother. You're a terrible person. You deserve to be unhappy. You deserve the treatment you're getting from your husband, because look at what you're doing to your kids. That's shaming. That's self-directed blame. And then what do we do about it? What do we do about it? We have to take responsibility for our happiness. This is the solution to being stuck in a complain, blame, shame cycle, is saying, okay, these behaviors are actually victim behaviors. And if I want to be a victor in my life, a leader in my life, then I need to act like it. And I know no one wants to own victimhood or martyrdom, but I applaud you if you have the courage, or you're willing to lean into the courage to say, shit, these behaviors that I am doing are just what Tamara was describing. I'm doing that. I'm playing the victim. And I'm going to use my ex-husband as an example, because he is static. He's very, very static. He hasn't changed, that I can tell, in all these years. There are moments where he's like, there's hope, like some dramatic thing will happen with one of our kids, and then he changes for a little bit, but it doesn't stick. And it is now, this year, 10 years since I left the marriage, and he continues to blame me for ruining his family, for destroying his family. 10 years on, he is still acting as if it's the minute I served him divorce papers. Nothing for him has changed. I'm still evil. I'm a horrible person. I'm a liar. I'm a cheat. I didn't cheat, and I may have lied because I was afraid to tell the truth at that point. So I'll own that. And owning that is a sign of taking total responsibility for your life. I did not behave always in integrity, and I can own that now. He will never believe that, because he's static, fixed, and I did this to him, right? Who's done this to you? Who's made your life miserable? Could you take a moment and just be willing to see if there's anybody in your life that you are giving your power away to? Because ultimately, that's what it is. In my ex-husband's mind, I am an all-powerful supreme being who has total control over his life. He doesn't realize it's that way, but isn't that sad? Do you want to be giving your power away to the person you're the most angry or frustrated with or hurt by? No. So 10 years on, I could still say, oh, it's his fault that I'm unhappy, or it's my mom's fault that I don't live the most wonderful life. But guess what? I can't say that, because I agreed that it wasn't their fault a long time ago. And I took responsibility for my happiness. And I started saying, oh, I gave my voice away. I gave my power away. As long as I'm blaming others, as long as I'm complaining, I'm powerless to change. As long as I'm shaming myself, I'm powerless to change. But the moment that I say, I am willing to take responsibility for my happiness and my sadness or unhappiness, then I can look for the solutions that will promote greater happiness, lower stress, and ultimately an empowered life that enables me to create a life that I love now. So if you have any questions, drop that in the comments. All week, we're going to go into a slightly different area each day. Tomorrow, we're going to go into the thinking mind and the cost of that, the cost of negative thinking. All of it boils down to us experiencing lower quality life, lower quality relationships, lower quality health, lower quality sleep. And I want to leave you with a tool today that is one of my favorites. If you've ever watched one of my lives or come to one of my classes before, I mean, not any of my lives, but one related to this, then you've probably learned it. It's called the inner ease technique or quick coherence technique. And it is from the Institute of Heart Math to help you take that stress response, that incoherent rhythm of your heart rate, into a coherent rhythm. So I invite you to simply let your breath become a little bit deeper and slower than your usual breath. And you might, while you do that, get a little comfortable in your chair. Let your feet rest on the floor. Let your posture straighten up and your shoulders drop from your ears. You don't have to take deep, deep breaths. Just let your breath become a little lower or a little slower and a little deeper than your usual breath. Posture matters less than comfort, but let the breath be able to flow. So sit as straight as comfortably possible. And when you do this on your own, you might take each step for a minute or two. We'll do it a little bit shorter. Simply letting your breath become a little deeper, a little slower. And then imagine the breath moving in and out of your heart center. So for some people, it might help to rest a hand on your heart. For some, you might visualize a white or a green light moving in and out of your heart center. And I encourage you to drop your focus or close your eyes so that you're turning inward. And while you're still breathing that healthy belly breath, you are imagining the breath moving in and out of your heart, activating that heart chakra. While you're still breathing a little deeper and a little slower. And on your own, you might do this step for a minute or two. And our final step is to consciously cultivate feelings of love, appreciation, and gratitude. Because while 5 minutes in a state of frustration can depress the immune system, just 5 minutes in a state of love, appreciation, or gratitude can boost the immune system for up to 6 hours. So go ahead and consciously cultivate feelings of love, appreciation, and gratitude. You might bring to mind someone that you adore who brings only positive emotions, someone you love so much that when you imagine them there with you, they bring a smile to your face. You might imagine your favorite pet or place in the world. Maybe the summer sun warm on your cheeks. Whatever brings you positive feelings in your body and fully allow yourself to feel them. This is why we're consciously cultivating these feelings, because we want to actually feel them in our bodies. And you might even, like I just did, find yourself taking a deep breath, because now what's happening is that the cortisol is lowered and the oxytocin is being produced. And that is that bonding hormone. It's all the good stuff. All those good, happy hormones are now being released in your brain as you consciously cultivate love, appreciation, and gratitude. And this is how we will close today. And I am grateful for you being here, thankful for your attention, and I hope to see you back tomorrow, same time, same place, where we will delve deeper into the cost of unhappiness and what our negative thinking mind is doing to us. But for now, stay in that feeling of love and appreciation and gratitude, and practice this tool. You can always come back to it whenever you feel yourself tensing up or stressing out. Come back to love, appreciation, and gratitude, and notice how you feel as this becomes a bite-sized chunk happiness practice for you. I'm Tamara Zoner, and I'm very grateful for your time today. I'll see you tomorrow.